Well, he's there. He's back. He's Chris Mannix, our good buddy, the Sports Illustrated senior writer. He has been a busy man here. All right, you want to start with MVP, the Sacramento Kings, the dangerous Lakers, Durant's back.
Whichever
you pick.
Whichever way you want to go, Dan. You can start with MVP since I was just reading before we came on. Tim Bontemps, my friend over at ESPN, had his latest straw poll, which shows the race between Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid, and to a lesser extent, Giannis Antetokounmpo, tightening pretty good. So we can start there.
It feels like it's contentious, not between Embiid and the Joker, but the writers and fan base. I don't remember this being this way.
I don't think it's contentious among the writers. It's contentious certainly among the fans. It's contentious certainly on social media. Mm-hmm. Radio, TV personalities, some of them have, made it seem like if you vote for player X, that means you hate player Y, which none of the writers actually believe. I'm an MVP voter, and look, I've gone back and forth on this vote, but not because I feel differently or I hate Nikola Jokic more than I did back in February when I voted the first time. But circumstances change. Since the last ESPN straw poll, you've seen the Bucks go on a 15-game winning streak. You've seen the Sixers 8 out of 10 and Joel Embiid play out of his mind. So things just change. That's why the voting habits change. And if you go back to December, Dan, Jason Tatum was the leader in the MVP clubhouse. So, things just tend to evolve over a season.
How do you think this plays out?
I think it's going to come down to potentially which team gets hot in the final couple of weeks of the season, potentially which player takes off. I mean, I was one of the few people that cast my unofficial vote this week for Giannis. Giannis, I think, is the most complete two-way player that's left among those top three. The Bucks right now have the best record in basketball, and the Bucks have done it with Chris Middleton playing like 30 games this season. Every other player that we're talking about in the MVP race has a all-star or all-star caliber co-star or co-stars. Yes, Drew Holiday is right there in that mix, but Chris Middleton is the number 2 in Milwaukee. And his absence, while James Harden has been playing, while Jamal Murray has been playing, Michael Porter Jr. even playing in Denver, that's a variable to me. So Giannis kind of taking this team and elevating them to the best record in the NBA right now, that gave him a slight edge on my most recent vote.
Talking to Chris Mannix from Sports Illustrated, their senior writer. How about my Kings? How big is this story?
It's huge. It's huge. One of the most wildly entertaining teams I've seen in a while. Probably the most entertaining since, Mike D'Antoni's teams from back in the day, because they are
more entertaining than Golden State?
Yeah. Yeah, because Golden State would play defense and Sacramento doesn't, which makes them even more entertaining. It's just fun watching this team get the ball out of their own basket, run up the floor, and try to score. That's why it's kind of shades of the D'Antoni Suns. I mean, even the D'Antoni Suns, during their best years, where you could find them 15, 20 in defense. Sacramento, in most categories, is bottom 5. And you watch them, and I've watched a lot of Kings games this year because, again, they are fun to watch. But you watch them, and it's not like the effort's not there defensively. It's not like the schemes aren't there defensively, because Mike Brown is an excellent defensive coach. They're just fundamentally bad. Like, top to bottom, they are bad defensively. From Sabonis to Fox, Kevin Huerter, great offensive players, dynamic at some positions, but straight bad defensively. That's why, most of these scores are like 130, 120, 140, 132. It just makes them so much fun to watch. And, but ending this drought is impressive.
But it's entertaining. But can you win with this in the playoffs?
No, you absolutely cannot win with this in the playoffs.
Okay.
The matchups are going to be interesting because right now you look at the bottom of the Western Conference playoff standings and you see, in no particular order, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Timberwolves. It's very easy to envision a scenario, not just where the Kings get knocked out in the first round, but any of the top 3 teams right now in the Western Conference getting knocked out in the first round. But specific to the Kings, you've got to be like, I don't know, better than a bottom third defensive team to succeed in the playoffs when you can't run as much, when possessions become a lot more valuable. And I think the Kings are going to have some fun moments in the postseason, but I don't see them getting very far with that defense.
The most dangerous team in the West is who?
Lakers. Most dangerous team in the West. And Dan, I will tell you right now, the Lakers are going to win the Western Conference.
Wow.
That is my prediction to you today.
Okay.
They will win the Western Conference.
Okay.
It's not knee-jerk to what we saw last night against Chicago. It's more of a combination of everything I've seen over the last few weeks with Anthony Davis, again, playing like Anthony Davis. Austin Reeves taking off in the second half of the season. The trades that they made, these guys that fit. D'Angelo Russell, he fits. Rui Hashimura, good role player. Jared Vanderbilt. You get some kind of Dennis Rodman vibes off Jared Vanderbilt when he's in the game. And LeBron, he came back from this foot injury a little bit earlier than people thought he would, which gives him more of a runway to get back into a rhythm before the start of the playoffs. I mean, since the All-Star break, Dan, they have a top 4 defense in the league. And I just see too many signs that suggest when they get to the playoffs, they're going to be dangerous there. Because who do you fear? Like, who are you picking in the first round against the Lakers? Right now, they're in number 8. Do they play Denver? Do you pick the Nuggets over the Lakers? I'm sorry, I wouldn't. Memphis, they're a mess right now. Sacramento, we talked about them. I think the Lakers, the biggest threat to the Lakers, in my opinion, are the teams they could play in the second and third round at the bottom half of the bracket. If the Warriors get Andrew Wiggins back and they start playing like the Warriors, the Clippers get Paul George back. Those are the teams, the Suns, we can get into them. I mean, if they get their chemistry right, those are the teams that would make me more anxious if I was the Lakers than Denver, Memphis, or Sacramento.
Yeah, I thought you would say Phoenix would be the most dangerous team with Durant coming back. How come they're not the most dangerous team?
They're right up there, but I still need to see more from this version of Phoenix. I don't put much stock in what Durant did last night, first game back, and I can only imagine with an ankle injury that was so bizarre, there's going to be some comfort issues coming back into the fold. But, you know, Chris Paul continues to have an inconsistent shooting year. I want to see who's that kind of fourth and fifth guy off of, or fifth guy really, off of the top 4 that they have in Phoenix. How does that bench shape out? It's kind of a thin bench right now. And look, they've got a lot of guys, Dan, that have been dealing with, soft tissue injuries, muscle injuries, different things like that over the course of the season. DeAndre Ayton just missed 4 games with a hip injury. That's a dangerous team because of their star power. But in the playoffs, I mean, it feels like they're one moment away from one of those guys going down, which would completely derail their plans.
Help me understand the Ben Simmons situation. What happens next?
You've just got to continue the rehabilitation process if you're Brooklyn. There's no other alternative at this point. There's no market for Ben Simmons. Nobody in the NBA really knows, if you're making like the Ben Simmons pie chart, how much of it is mental, how much of it is physical, how much of it is a situation. There's a lot of questions around him to the point where nobody is going to touch him. Certainly not with the numbers that are left on that contract. I mean, the Nets, there's no pressure on Brooklyn right now because they're not going to win anything for the foreseeable future. So I believe their mindset this offseason, with a full offseason with Simmons being relatively healthy, is to just try to find unique ways to get him back on track, because they really don't have any other choice. Like there's no other destination for Ben Simmons. There's no place they can trade him. They're certainly not going to cut him and eat all that money. Yeah. They've got to figure out this summer a way to fix Ben Simmons so that he is something close to the player we've once seen in years past.
Yeah, and it's like Markelle Fultz worked to come back.
Yeah.
And really, it's been a really good story, but he disappeared in Orlando. It's like Ben Simmons needs to disappear someplace so we don't focus on his game every single night, or he's not playing for a contender where he's hurting that team. And then maybe he gets some confidence back. But, man, you can't go from Defensive Player of the Year to averaging 17 and 8, and then you're not even playing anymore. Like, I don't know. Mind-boggling.
Look, the people around Ben Simmons will tell you that everything is kind of an offshoot of the initial injury, whether it's the knee connects to the hip, connects to the back. All those things have been giving Ben Simmons problems. But I couldn't agree with you more that Ben Simmons needs to get back in anonymity, which is exactly what Fultz did. And there were some similarities there because Fultz's injuries did appear to be both physical and mental. And he went to Orlando where there was no pressure. And, he's had some injuries down there, but as a player, he has been able to revive his career. And look, maybe Brooklyn is that destination. Yeah. I mean, the Nets are in New York, but even when they're great, nobody really cares. They're still a Knicks town. So that could be his opportunity to rebuild himself next year, but he can't play for a contender right now, not with that type of pressure.
Would you rather be a Knicks fan or a Kings fan right now?
Ooh. I'd probably rather be a Kings fan, not just for this year, but for the foreseeable future, because I can project out 4 or 5 years of the Kings rising in the playoff standings, in the playoff field, becoming a contender. If they can add a couple of defensive players, they could be at another level. The Knicks, they just reek of first round exit. They just do. Like they're better than what they were in years past because Jalen Brunson is there. And Jalen Brunson's a game changer. I think Jalen Brunson deserves, credit for elevating Julius Randle this year because, Julius Randle's playing more like the guy we saw 2 years ago than the one we saw last year. And that has a lot to do with Jalen Brunson. But I still don't trust that team in the playoffs. I've watched too many Knicks games, Dan, where Randle just grabs the ball with under 5 minutes left and, goes 1-on-5 sometimes. And defenses have kind of figured him out. You saw it in the playoffs a couple of years ago against Atlanta. A couple of games they to break it down or boil it down, they see him kind of look one way, they send a double team from another and force him to either turn the ball over or take a bad shot. That's just not a team I can trust right now. It's a great matchup on Friday, by the way, with a team they're likely to face in the first round. That's Cleveland. I think Cleveland's a more complete team than the Knicks are. They're overall better defensively, and I think Donovan Mitchell will be the best player on the floor in that series. And won't it be great to see Donovan Mitchell go to Madison Square Garden and break the hearts of all Knicks fans? I think the Knicks are a team that's built for pretty good success in the regular season. But when you get to the playoffs and you're going to be forced to rely on Julius Randle and forced to ask for efficiency from RJ Barrett and forced to have Jalen Brunson step up into a bigger role, I'm just not buying them. I think the Kings have the higher ceiling.
I'll leave you with this. I'm big on body language, and I'm watching the Mavs last night. Luka does not look good, man. How's this end?
I don't know. He's in year one of a long-term contract, but the Mavericks made this Kyrie deal because they're worried about Luka asking out in the foreseeable future. And, whenever I check in with people in Dallas, it's made clear to me in no uncertain terms that they don't blame Kyrie for what's going on down here. Kyrie, by all accounts, has been a great locker room guy, a pretty good leader. Saying it's a cluster bleep last night was probably not a page out of Dale Carnegie, but he has been a pretty good soldier down in Dallas. The problem they have, Dan, is their roster is deeply flawed. You watch, Luka and Kyrie are not good defensive players, but when there's nobody behind them to clean up their mistakes, they become exponentially worse because you can't rely on JaVale McGee and Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber to be defensive stoppers. So if you have two turnstiles at the top of the perimeter, you're not going to have much success getting stops in the paint. It reminds me a lot of what the Jazz look like in recent years when Rudy Gobert was out of the lineup, where they could score a bunch of points, but they couldn't stop anybody. And I don't know how it gets better next season. Like, let's spin it forward, and let's say you bring Kyrie back on a long-term deal, which is a massive risk in and of itself. Like, you don't have flexibility to go out and get the wing stopper that you had in Dorian Finney-Smith. You have no flexibility to get the perimeter or the interior big. You have no flexibility to flesh out that roster. You're just going to have to hope that those two guys catch lightning in a bottle and can outscore you on most nights. And that's not a recipe for success. It's really not. So
they were better.
I think it's going to end poorly.
They were better before they made the trade. They were a better team.
It was a panic move.
Yes.
It was a panic move because they failed last year with Jalen Brunson. We don't need to go back down that path, but that was a catastrophic mistake, not re-signing him the first or second time that they had the opportunity. And now they go out and, we're the only team really in the NBA willing to roll the dice on Kyrie. And you look at the offseason, Dan, like, who's out there that would take a chance on Kyrie besides Dallas this summer? Like, the Lakers, I mean, if they do that, if they go out there and gut their roster to get Kyrie Irving, that would be one of the most dysfunctional moves I've seen in a while. The Suns have no interest. Kevin Durant doesn't look like he wants to be anywhere near Kyrie anymore. Like, some of the cap space teams, like Detroit, San Antonio, are they making a run at Kyrie Irving? Like, it's Dallas or bust, it feels like right now for Kyrie.
Good to talk to you as always. Thanks again, Chris.
You got it, Dan.
That's Chris Mannix, senior writer for Sports Illustrated. We'll take a break. Our play of the day is up next.